Always remember, the opinion you follow should be your own. Just consider the things stated here to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online.
I got to talk. I got to tell what I feel. I got to talk about my life as I see it.
One thing about the Gabby Petito documentary that was spurred in my mind was that moving forward, no actors will be required for a lot of documentaries moving forward. You know, like I watch a lot of documentaries, and they'll intersperse it with, if it's a time where they do have live footage, they'll have some actors to play out certain portions, and they'll have some famous actor as a narrator, and that's the voice of the person. And we're reaching a point, especially if another incident or someone is documented who is a social media or content creator person, we will literally be able to have footage from birth all the way to their death and everything in between. Especially when you take into consideration, because I watch like those murder documentaries more so than anything else. So there's also a criminal element, and because of that, it made me realize that if a documentary needed it, you could knock on somebody's door and be like, "Hey, you live across the street from them. Can I get your ring footage?" From, you know, like my neighborhood, like almost every other house got a ring, one of those, you know what I'm talking about? The doorbell.
Absolutely. I mean, Phil, I've got them on my truck. So I have a what they call a blink camera system, and I have 8 cameras that are stationed on the outskirts and are all around surrounding my vehicle. So anything happens anywhere near me, and I know about it. It's recording it. It happens even while I'm driving. So what you bring up is a good point about going forward. Like you can get, like, look at this Gabby Petito thing. You had footage from her because she's a content creator. But to be honest with you, you don't even have to be a content creator to have footage. Almost everybody is shooting photos and videos and whatnot on their phone at bare minimum, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to eventually evolve to anybody. If you want to do a documentary, because I'm guilty of that. My daughter, I filmed every moment of her life.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if something happens with her and we don't want it to be morbid, maybe she invents something and they want to do a documentary on her or whatever, I got all the footage.
Yep. And now, and within the last couple of years, it's gotten even to the point now, like you brought up, doorbell cams and security cameras and, chest mounted cameras on body cameras on police and people that are working. So like just in this documentary on Gabby Petito alone, they got police footage, they got neighbors footage, they got other people that knew them, they got their own footage. And that every year that goes by is only increasing. I mean, hell, right now, if you wanted to do a documentary on me, it would be super easy to get a footage going back, probably like, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so. Like, for you and I, going back to the beginning is a little bit rough because we didn't have the technology that we have today. But I'll tell you what, going forward now, if you ever think that you are not on camera, you're always on camera.
Right.
I mean, that's the reality.
Right. Matter of fact, even in some of the remote places that we go now, because I've spotted things out in the woods before, and I was like, oh, they're monitoring us, and I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
I have seen drones fly over, and I know drones, and I'm like, that's not a DJI.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not filming nothing out here.
Yeah, I could tell you by my property up in Montana, it's only just south of the border, of the Canadian border, and they've got cameras in the trees up there along the border and all along the Canadian border there. So, and that's in the middle of nowhere.
Well, they make a point of letting you know, because going to your house, that what is it, North Fork Road?
North Fork Road, yeah.
Right. If you take it all the way to the border, where that border ranger station, whatever it is they call
Yep.
it,
Yep.
they'll make a point of like flying low and
Uh-huh.
checking you out.
Hmm. Same on the Mexican border. I mean, anywhere you can go near the Mexican border, you can assume you're being filmed from trees, from blimps. They got blimps along the border in Arizona. Drones, like you said, just all sorts of stuff. But it's not just, obviously, it's not just traveling in borders and whatnot. It's, look, if you go to the grocery store or you go to the pharmacy or you go to the gas station, I mean, everything you do is on video at this point. And that's just reality. And not only is it on video, like, I don't remember if you remember a couple of years ago, it wasn't that long ago, where you'd get police footage and it was so blurry you could barely tell what the guy's face was. It's like, yeah, that guy looks like he's about to. Now, I mean, we're talking 4K, a lot of this footage that's coming off this thing.
Right.
There's no hiding anything. They can see everything about what you're doing.
I remember when they used to say, he clearly has a gun in his hand, and you're like,
Yeah.
all I see is 4 pixels of white. I don't know what that is.
Exactly. And now you could say, like, that's a Glock. Yep. It's true.
Mike, I did something monumental in my life a few days ago.
Uh-oh.
Actually, it's been over a week now.
Okay.
I canceled my cable
TV.
Now, let me be specific. They also provide internet. So, still got the internet.
Right.
But I don't have cable any longer.
Yep.
And it should have happened maybe 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm one of those people. I was one of the people that was slow to digital reading, like on a Kindle or something. I still, to this day, love reading a book. And I was slow to dropping my cable. And I'm thinking about dropping my landline. Yes, I have a landline.
Yeah, not too many people have that anymore.
But it made me think, bro. I really think that cable has maybe 5 years tops.
Well, I'll tell you what, like,
it's going to morph into something else.
Agreed. I mean, from my perspective, and those of you that out there that are listening that are in a similar situation to me, that may be full timers or nomads or RVers or whatnot. I mean, obviously, we don't have cable plugged into our truck, right? So I've been living like this for five plus years now, and what I can tell you is every single thing that you want to watch, you still have the ability to watch without cable. It's not that difficult. It really isn't that difficult. I think I've mentioned here on the podcast before, some of my favorite shows, like, some of the HBO stuff, Game of Thrones, and some of the things that are on Paramount, like Yellowstone and Landman, and all this stuff. I mean, most of that comes through my Amazon. So I have an Amazon Prime subscription, right? And I'm watching it on my smart TV, and it's just an app. And you go in, so everything that Amazon has, and then it's got the networks, and it's got all these shows, and I pay $4.99 extra a month on top of my Amazon Prime to get the Paramount Plus network, and you can have Netflix, obviously. And if you add it up, now, for most normal people that, I mean, unless you're a TV holic, which I don't think there's that many people that are probably listening to our podcast that are, or probably more outdoorsy people. I mean, you can, I think my total bill a month right now is probably, if I had to take a guess, I would say I pay less than $25 a month total for my quote media that I get. And that's way less than way less than I was paying for cable television in a house.
Yeah, for years I have held on to cable for one reason, and it you just addressed it was certain channels I specifically wanted to keep, like HBO, Showtime, and those, because I'm a big boxing buff. I watch all the fights, and I don't have to watch the fights anymore, so there's no reason for me to have cable anymore. I can watch everything. And I wanted to note that, like, you ever heard of Tubi?
Oh yeah, I have Tubi, and that's the thing is, so a lot of the stuff, even if you're not subscribed, but you're on one of those apps like a Tubi. There's a couple other ones that are basically free, and they have everything, including the Super Bowl. Like, so we watched the Super Bowl through that. Well, and so you get some extra commercials. Big deal. Like, you're getting that on cable TV anyways.
So that's exactly where I was headed with the Super Bowl thing. Tubi, I didn't watch it on Tubi. I didn't even watch the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But what I've read and talked to other people, everybody said that Tubi had the best Super Bowl coverage that they've ever seen, and there was some kind of they had like emerging technologies and stuff that they were using. But the point that I'm getting to is television is on the internet now.
Well, look, the reason that people are out there right now listening to us, Phil, is because traditional media. So this is not only talking about cable TV here. This is also talking about your legacy media, like the big networks and then the big cable channels like Fox News and CNN and whatever. Increasingly, more and more, we've talked about this on other podcasts. One of the reasons why Donald Trump won is increasingly people have morphed off of legacy media, and they're getting their information from people like us, like podcasters. They're getting it from programs that are running on YouTube. They're getting it from programs. Look, even this season, some of the sports networks are now, or sports leagues are starting to go to, quote, non-legacy networks like Thursday Night Football is on Amazon, or so like the whole way we consume information and media, it's totally changed.
So what do you think was the significant turning point where there was like a flood of people that dropped cable and went to streaming? When do you think the turning point was?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell you, and this is near and dear to me as a content creator, YouTuber. I actually think it's YouTube was the beginning of it, because this goes back quite some time, and it's very similar to the music industry, where now you can become a recording star by putting out songs on TikTok or on Instagram or on a story or something. YouTube gave anybody, myself included, or you or anybody else, the ability to put out media to the world. And then people got, well, let me see if I can do my own news channel now. And so like something happens in the news right now, you could find the story almost instantaneously on YouTube, or X, or any of the other social medias. But like, I think YouTube goes back long enough. I think that was the beginning. I'm not saying that was the big thing that made people drop cable, but I think that's where it started.
Oh no, my thoughts parallel. I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. When I was asking the question, though, I meant like, okay, everything you said absolutely did happen, and I agree. But there was still, TV still dominated. Mm-hmm. What happened? What made people finally jump ship in the last, I'd say, maybe 5 years?
Well, I mean, there's been a number of things.
Some people might say what you say about
sports.
Starlink.
Starlink is for sure.
And mine is COVID. I think COVID, we had to condition the mind, and COVID was the perfect incubation for that. The word binge watching was created during COVID.
Yeah.
Well, it wasn't created, but it was like.
Mm-hmm. That's right. So, and I think what happens is that you, right, wrong, or indifferent, look, if you go back, we're old enough to know that when you go back long enough with us, and there was basically 3 networks in the world, right? And that was it. And then it started there were some new ones added. Fox came on board where it used to be just NBC, CBS, and ABC. And then you started getting cable came on the scene, and you got the CNNs and the Fox Newses and Discovery Channel. And then it started filtering out, and you got more and more options. And I think what you said at the top of the show, the technology has changed. And because of the technology change, now if I want to, I can produce and make a movie with the equipment that I have on board my truck right now and put it out to the world. I can make a full-length feature movie. And that was not possible not too long ago. So I think that's what's changed. And now you're seeing like anchors from legacy media, like, big stars that used to be on Fox News that got let go, or even people from MSNBC and CNN. Some of their shows that they're doing on podcasts and doing on X, as an example, on a different platform or on YouTube, are bigger and gaining more audience than they were when they were with the network. That's crazy.
It's funny you said that, because something I saw on CNN a couple of days ago, I don't remember who they were interviewing, but after I saw it, I started paying attention, and I noticed this a lot now. Your CNNs, your MSNBCs, even your like local big, NBC channel, Channel 5 and stuff like that. What they're doing now is they are literally downgrading their equipment that's visual to you to give off the impression of like what you see on YouTube. Like I'm starting to see like Mic Mini and Rode mics being used. And I'm like, I know that business. They just got out of a truck with way better product. So that's totally for the visual.
Totally. You're right, but to some extent, the technology has advanced so much that they don't need this big. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time. We walk around at Overland Expo now. We can put our stuff in our pocket, where we used to have to carry bags and bags and bags of stuff. Right?
We used to have to get a cart.
Get somebody with a golf cart to carry around our media equipment. And now, I mean, let's face it. The technology just moves so far forward that anybody can do it. Now, I'm not suggesting that everybody has talent to do it, but anybody can do it. And the newer generations, the younger generations now, are more used to being told the latest news from their friends on YouTube, or from people. It is a trust factor. See, that's the other thing that we could go down a rabbit hole, but legacy media, by and large, has lost the trust of the public. Absolutely. People don't trust anybody. No anchor. They don't trust anybody. They don't trust local news. They don't trust international news. They don't trust the New York Times anymore. They don't trust the Washington. Nobody trusts any of that, because they all have some kind of vested interest in it. So you're much more likely to trust you and I on a podcast, or Joe Rogan, somebody, what I mean? Somebody that isn't being paid, or is trying for some kind of slant or skew. And I mean, that's a big deal. And I think the younger generations recognize that there's a trust factor that comes with familiarity with the people. So, I can announce right here on this podcast, the Pope is sick and whatever. So you may get your news, quite frankly, from me. And that's okay. Because nowadays, with the technology that we have, AI and everything else, you could fact check stuff a lot easier. I mean, remember a couple presidential cycles ago, everybody's talking about fact check. Well, any one of us can do a fact check at this point. It's not that difficult, So,
Mike, I don't want to keep harboring on COVID, but everything you said,
that's when it changed.
Again, comes back to COVID.
I agree.
Like you were talking about them not believing in the media and the media spokespeople. Well, that was one of the significant things that triggered people. It's like, wait a minute, the same people who are telling me I don't need this were the same people who telling me.
Yep. The media got lumped in with the government. So, if Anthony Fauci said something about a vaccine, Next, Anderson Cooper was talking about it on CNN, and the problem is that, as we've subsequently found out, but basically both of them were somewhat full of shit, meaning that they were just spouting stuff that was not factual based on the fact that, I mean, it's in some ways not their own fault, but nobody really knew. Nobody knew what the answers were. Nothing was tested. So, 1 minute it's like stay 5 feet away. Next minute it's 2 feet away. Next minute, no, that doesn't matter. If you wear the mask, but you don't wear the mask, you could take. We had so much disinformation being passed along that I think the media was the ones that were passing this disinformation. So they were lumped right in with the guys that were broadcasting it.
I agree. A lot of what's done in business school is you do case studies of businesses. You go over their history, what moves they made, what the political situation was, and blah, 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 blah. I believe as time goes on, education and documentaries will have to highlight COVID in our history. And not just for the 2 years of events and those who lost their lives, but also for the still evolving repercussions of those 2 years. I don't think this is going to be like some quick little snippet in history. I believe that as history goes on, it will become a more highlighted time because there will be so many things that have happened that stemmed from COVID.
I agree. I mean, it's still going on. We're 5 years out now, and you still got the consequences of COVID, of both action and inaction. You've got people. Look, we're still polarized because of it. There's still people that believe that the government was completely full of shit. The vaccines didn't do anything, which is, by the way, I'll just try to stay out of judgment on all of this right now. But what I mean by that is, like, that created it. It was the largest event in generations that produced non-trusting people. Like, I think it taught all of us to not trust what we're hearing. I think maybe before that we were like inclined to believe the World Health Organization. We were inclined to believe the CDC. We were inclined to believe, look, if the government said something, by and largely it was fact or whatever. And then we all go, wait a minute here. We've been sold a bill of goods. I think a lot of people have come to this conclusion, and that the repercussions of that are going to go on and on and on. Financially, the economic repercussions, I mean, we're definitely still involved with that and will be for many years, if not forever. There's businesses that completely changed. We printed money like it was going out of style, which has created, you get people bitching and bitching. I heard somebody last night, I was out and somebody was bitching about price of eggs and all this stuff in America and, all this crap. And, then I hear somebody say, hey, they're checking out the Fort Knox or whatever to see if there's gold in it. And they're like, well, it doesn't really matter whether we have gold because our financial system isn't backed by gold. Well, yeah, no fucking shit. That's the problem. I mean, let's be honest. This is the problem. So because they're like, well, we just can print more money anyway, so it's irrelevant how much gold we have. Well, okay. Well, now you're asking me why the eggs cost so much. There you go. I mean, so you've got a bunch of meatheads running around out there that are thinking like they're wondering why shit's expensive. Well, because we gave a bunch of PPP money away during COVID. We shut businesses down. Parts of the country suffered enormously from unnecessary business shutdowns. I mean, you had all sorts of crap going on. And yes, like you said at the top, there were many people that died. I mean, I hate to say it this bluntly, but like there's many people that die all the time. That's just a fact of life. If they're not dying of COVID, they're dying of the flu, they're dying of freaking something else or whatever. So, and
COVID's numbers were actually lower than the average flu.
Yeah. And the problem is that, it became all about the money. It was all about financial, right? So hospitals would make more money if they declared on the death certificate it was COVID. Well, of course, well, I'm going to write it down. I don't give a shit what the guy died of. I'm going to get an extra 20 grand out of this. Right. I mean, which, by the way, that's the money that we printed so that way your eggs cost more today. So, I mean, this is really simple economics, but people are just clueless. And, I rant a lot about, I might sound
Are you running for office right now, Mike? God damn, you preaching now.
But well, listen, I mean, I've been accused multiple times of being more on the right and that I'm, anti-liberal. But the reality is that's actually not true. I am pretty much always been somewhat of a libertarian. I don't really care what people do. But just, let live is sort of my motto. And the problem is like what I find right now is the liberal side, the left-leaning side, is less libertarian, I'll say, than the right-leaning side. Now, I'm going to tell you, because we could talk about this at length, and we can get into some of the current events that are going on, like with Donald Trump, that I'll tell you, like I could talk for 20 minutes, and you're going to assume that I'm a Democrat because I hate a bunch of things that are occurring right now that I totally disagree with. But I know I'm all over the place. But the reality is, in my opinion, when it comes to COVID and it comes to the pandemic, I think what history is going to show you is, to be honest with you, I think the quote, it divided people into one side or the other. And I believe that you're going to find that the side that was what I'm going to call the liberal side was more wrong. That's my opinion. And that's my belief, because I think that more information we get coming out, the more we find out, well, the vaccine didn't really work and the mask didn't really work. And some of these vaccines were untested and have caused complications that were never admitted to before. We've got healthy people dropping dead. There's a bunch of shit that we were sold a bill of goods on. And I think largely that was being pushed by the left, the liberal side.
Agreed. So we're gonna play a game, but before the game, I just want to defend you real quick, bro. About you being liberal or whatever. First of all, from the outside looking in, I could be wrong, but from the outside looking in, you are way more liberal. You have way more liberal stuff going on about you than you do have conservative. And
yes, but as soon as
you are more liberal than I am.
But here's the problem. Sure. But here's the problem. I could be liberal as shit, and if I say on this podcast that I think the vaccine was a piece of was fucking bullcrap, then suddenly I might as well be to the right of Donald Trump, and that's the problem.
That's why we had that segment last week about confronting truth and facts versus how you feel about it.
And so I look at it as transactional. And I look at a lot of stuff that's going on right now as we had this discussion with I was out with some liberal friends, I had some conservative friends, I had people on both sides. And I said to them, look, I'm transactional. I listen. And I'm at the end of the day, I don't get emotional about it. Like I think, and that's the problem. Is what's happening is you've got the far sides, the far right and the far left, get so emotional. They take it very personally, and like the mask thing. I can remember how personal was that, Phil? People would get fucking rate if you weren't wearing a mask, right?
Yes.
And like, and by the way, and half the people were at it halfway hanging down their face. They weren't wearing it properly. Wasn't made out of the right material. Look, unless you were walking around with a double N95 mask on that was medically approved for like
double 90,
like a surgery room or something, it wasn't doing shit.
Right. If anything, it was collecting it.
Yeah. So.
But Mike, it wasn't even in one direction. Because like I always tell you about how I was traveling in intimate areas during this time. And once you got out of the major cities, it was the flip. You walk in the diner with a mask on, everybody's looking at you like, what? Who are you?
You were going to get hit with a baseball bat. So it worked both ways. And I know I was traveling at the same time because I had to put a mask on because I was so damn used to it from being in New England. When I got down to the panhandle of Florida, I remember going into a Walmart and I walk into I got people looking at me and I look around and nobody's I ripped that thing off so damn fast because I thought I was going to get killed.
So Mike, let's have a little fun. We're going to play a game.
Okay, good.
Now let me preface this with warnings and disclaimers.
Okay.
You told me you don't have no issue with me putting you on the spot. This is geared toward putting you on the spot, okay?
The more you put me on the spot, the more my inbox fills up.
Okay, here we go. So, Trump announced some statues that they're going to be putting in the National Garden of American Heroes.
Okay.
And some of the big names were he was going to have Kobe Bryant. This is Black History Month. So he was making a point of mentioning these notable Black people that are going to be having statues in the National Garden of American Heroes. So he had Kobe,
but Phil, just where is that? Where is that located?
I would assume it's going to be in DC on the mall.
So it's new.
Right. So it does not exist at this point.
Gotcha.
But that's generally how it goes. It's usually they just one of them buildings. They still have buildings that they can.
Yep.
Right there on the mall. Anyway, Trump announced that Kobe Bryant, Muhammad Ali, and Jackie Robinson would be some of the statues. Then they went on further to mention some civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King, Harriet Tubman, Rosa Parks, Billie Holiday, Aretha Franklin, Coretta Scott, and Frederick Douglass. So let's go back to the beginning. So for the sports figures, he's got in mind to have his statues.
A bunch of them.
Kobe Bryant, Muhammad Ali, and Jackie Robinson. Now, this is for the National Garden of American Heroes.
Yep.
Do you agree, out of all the Black sports figures, you ain't got to agree, bro. Do you have a different three? Is there somebody you would switch out or whatever? And let me tell you again that.
So I'm assuming all of these people have to be dead.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll come back to that because I would like to hear who you would say alive. So dead, we have Kobe Bryant, Muhammad Ali, and Jackie Robinson as the first three for the National Garden of American Heroes.
So not knowing about this,
I'm going to go to the next subject if you want to.
No. No, I'm curious how they're defined. So it's interesting. Well, I could take a couple texts to answer this question. One, I struggle with defining heroes as people that are sports figures, just in general.
We're on the same page.
Yeah, regardless of who they are.
Okay, so we both in agreement in that, 110%.
And I heard you mention, top of that, I heard you mention musicians. Mm-hmm. There was a number of musicians in there. And then there were some civil rights people as well. Right? Those are basically the three categories I heard.
But since that's how our world works and they're going to make them heroes.
Yep.
Are you cool with that three? Do you have a different three? Kobe Bryant, Muhammad Ali, and Jackie Robinson. You want me to give you mine? Because I don't agree with it.
Okay.
I'd switch out Kobe Bryant with Bill Russell. It would be Bill Russell, Muhammad Ali, and Jackie Robinson. I don't know.
And why not Kobe Bryant?
He's not a hero. He's a sports hero.
Well, I agree. I mean, I agree with that, and I think he probably made the list because he's more contemporary, and he died in an accident, in a crash.
Which that bothers me more that
Yeah.
you put him, you usurped a person who should have went first because they died recently.
Right. No, but I think that's why.
But I don't even think like, let's say they're going to add a statue every year or every 5 years or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting Kobe as
the
next one or the next.
Yeah.
I could go the next 20 years and pick sports heroes, and Kobe wouldn't be in the consideration.
So let me ask you this:
I like him as a basketball player.
Sure, but do you think this has something to do with being I don't know how to say this, like kind of like a popularity contest?
It looks like it to me because I don't know how the hell Kobe Bryant got on there.
Yeah, popularity contest.
Okay, so
because if it wasn't, I mean you want to say Michael Jordan, right? Like,
no.
and he shouldn't be on there. I mean, yeah, I agree. No, I'm with you on that. But like, right? I mean, popularity, but he's not as popular.
For people who listening, not LeBron either.
Right. Not LeBron either.
LeBron, because he wore a T-shirt one time that said something that he went back on as soon as he was challenged about
That's right. That's
right. Okay, so like I said, I would just get rid of Kobe and put in Bill Russell. I'm totally cool with Muhammad Ali. For, I'd say, the first 30 or 40 years of my life, whenever asked the question, who would you like to have dinner with, living, dead, present, or whatever, I had Muhammad Ali as always at least one of the people in consideration, if not number one, depending upon how the question was asked.
Yeah.
Jackie Robinson, I have issues with Jackie Robinson, but I understand how the nation feels about him, so I have no problem him being that representative.
What about the musicians that are on that? I think you said Anita Franklin.
We're gonna go through all of that.
Anita Franklin, I mean,
but you threw a trick in there that I wanna use.
Oh, good.
So if with this same list, if people alive were included, who you adding or taking away? What's your? So I can give you mine quick. None, zero. There ain't no.
The people alive.
Right.
Well, I mean, I think you and I talked about this on a couple podcasts ago. It's one of the reasons why I've increasingly, if we're still on sports, I think I'm sure you're talking about sports. In my opinion, it's one of the reasons I've become disinterested in sports in general and don't follow some of the major leagues, because I just feel like it's become a grandstanding, big money. They're not heroes anymore. These aren't real. They're misbehaved. There's a lot of like just bullshit out there. I don't care what sport. Name a sport. They're all. It's like this in all of them.
The only one I can think of, and he's barely. I'm forcing this.
Yeah, is
Kaepernick. Because other modern person.
Yeah, but I could argue he's not a sports guy anymore either, because he's not playing sports. But what he did was during the time. Yeah. While he was,
and like I said, I'm barely squeezing him in there. But the reason why I'm squeezing him in there is because pretty much any other person that somebody's going to bring up their name, it's going to be something where they like stood up for Trump, or they stood up for Barack, or they stood up for this party or that party. That's not a hero to me.
Correct.
The hero to me is the person who stands up for an issue.
Well, first of all, Trump's not going to nominate anybody that's
but this is my list.
Oh yeah, for sure. But I mean, that's one of the reasons it's easy to be, because they're all passed away. It's like, otherwise there's no way he's doing it.
Right. So here we go. You wanted to go into the next one. So the next one, let's go with the music next.
You said Aretha Franklin,
and Billie Holiday.
Yeah.
That's it.
Oh, that's it. You sure? I thought there was a third one.
Nope.
No? Okay.
That's one where I don't care. Like.
No strong opinion on that.
The first one, the reason why I had another person was because I felt like one of the people didn't belong. I wouldn't get rid of Billie Holiday. I wouldn't
Yeah.
get rid of Aretha Franklin for anybody. So I'm cool with that. So the other one was civil rights leaders. Martin Luther King,
Mm-hmm.
Harriet Tubman,
Mm-hmm.
Rosa Parks,
Mm-hmm.
Coretta Scott King, Frederick Douglass.
Well, yeah. So you just named all the major ones, the biggest ones that anybody could think of. So once again, it goes back to popularity contest.
So you good with that list?
Well, I think if you're going to, those are the people that are most famous and that most people know, because I'm sure, look, like anything else, I'm sure there are other people that are not on that list that did more,
Yes.
but we don't know who they are.
Oh, yeah, we
Or,
do.
or they're more obscure.
No.
Well, like who when you say that, probably you agree, maybe.
Malcolm X.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Now, I know why he ain't on there, because he ain't popular, but if it's my list, I'm getting rid of Coretta Scott King quick and putting in Malcolm X. Like, how is Coretta, what did she do?
Nothing. She just promoted the legacy that was already there.
Because if you put Coretta Scott King, I'm not even looking at her. I'm like, okay, leave her. Just add the people I want. I don't really want her gotten rid of. But you have all these people who have done something, and then you just got somebody that was married to the person.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean.
So like I said, I don't have an issue with her being in. My issue is like, it opens the door. It sets a precedent that your accomplishment as a hero can be. So then that'll mean that what's her name? Why can't Barack Obama's wife, Michelle Obama, would be she'd be a shoo-in for this.
Yeah, even though she wasn't in the role.
And the thing is, she did more than Coretta Scott King has done. So you would have a hard time not allowing that.
Yeah.
And that would mean that what's her name? Kennedy?
Which Kennedy?
The president's wife, Jacqueline Kennedy.
Jacqueline Kennedy, yep.
Jacqueline Kennedy would just be like automatic. And she didn't do nothing but dress good.
Right.
And they thought she was attractive. And I don't mean, I swear I don't mean that in no disparaging way. But it's just how it is.
Yeah.
She didn't do nothing to be considered no hero.
Right. Right.
So my sentiment about Coretta Scott King is basically, I don't want the door open for you a hero because you were a wife. If there's going to be a presidential wife, it would have to be like Bird, who actually had something to do with policy and was actually out there talking to the people and did something.
Yeah.
But just because you said I do, I read this article. It's in the Washington Post and the New York Post. And it's titled, "In First Month, Trump Upends Century-Old Approach to the World" by Michael Birnbaum.
Oh, yeah. I read it.
I saw it. Okay. So then I don't need to preface this. Tell me what you think. And just for listeners who may not be up on, just quickly, the reason they're saying this partially is because of the executive orders, partially because we're doing gangster moves on Ukraine, partially because of the tariffs with China, Mexico, and all of that.
Yep. Yeah, the speed. When we've talked about this on the podcast, the speed at which things have happened, well, whether it's executive orders or, like you said, tariffs, or the amount of foreign leaders that have jumped and, quite frankly, got in an airplane and flew to Washington, D.C. is staggering. The amount of cabinet confirmations that he's gotten so quickly in comparison to other presidents, all of these things contribute, in my opinion, to this idea.
And quoting the first sentences because it gives the gist of the whole thing. The president appears to be turning back the clock to a time in world history when countries with the biggest militaries constructed empires, demanded tribute from weaker nations, and expanded their territories through coercion.
And that's what's happening. And I think
That's
that you're
absolutely
going
what's
to
happening.
Oh, it's absolutely what's happening. There are things that, and I think I said this. I'll give you my opposite take. So on a couple podcasts ago, I said it was a shock and awe campaign that came from Trump, and it was good to see. And I said this, and I got some flack for it. And I said, look, it was great to see so much happening, because after 4 years of having Sleepy Joe Biden drooling on himself at the beach, it was good to see anything happening, even if I didn't agree with everything. The problem, in my opinion, at this point, there are things that he is doing that I do not agree with. And I'll bring up one of the big ones is the Elon Musk Doge thing. Not that I'm against it, but the fact that they're taking the chainsaw approach to it is kind of asinine. Because the problem is like, I think anybody that's intelligent enough knows that most of the money that the government wastes and most of the ineffectiveness of the government is not due to the payroll. That is not where. So letting go, like, look, if you've got to eliminate 100 people in XYZ department, their approach so far, what it appears like, is let's just roll dice and pick 100 people and get rid of them. Doesn't matter which ones. They're not surgically deciding who's talented, who's not talented, who's important, who isn't important. They're just like cutting 100 people and saying, look, we now saved $4 million from this because we cut these 100 salaries. Well, that doesn't necessarily save you money. In the long run, it might cost us more money, because I'll use the National Park Service as an example, because you and I talk about national parks on this podcast a lot. And, I've heard from multiple friends across the United States that I knew in that system that have been let go. And I've seen, because I follow the national park stuff so closely, I've seen a couple parks announce like visitor centers closing on Mondays and things like that. So there is impact being had, and I don't know that that's effective. Like, you're not saving, quite frankly. Like, look, if you report back to me and say we just spent $50 billion in the Congo to hire DJ entertainment for people to make them feel good, yeah, I'm all for cutting that program if it was the USAID program that was involved with a bunch of nonsense. But it's a little bit different to say, we've got too many park employees, let's just let them go. And it doesn't save a lot of money, and it causes chaos.
There's a basic accounting flaw to what he's doing, and the whole thing that Doge is supposed to be about is accounting.
Yes.
And that is, well, let's just go back in history. Some of the most successful companies in the world, and the government is one, are Hershey's Chocolate and Ford. And if you know anything about the history of those two companies and what gave them the jump start on other companies, was one, them using manufacturing to its fullest. But the other was they understood that, one, if I paid you a decent wage, not only are you a worker, but you are a customer.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with this. Yes, cut out the fat, but at a certain point, you can cut out so many workers that you are cutting your tax base. You are cutting the economy in DC.
Well, and quite frankly, for Donald Trump, you're cutting supporters, because it's the same thing I said back a ways with Vladimir Putin. You send enough soldiers into battle, and they come back dead, and eventually the mothers of Russia are going to be like, I don't like this guy. And you've created public opinion against yourself, which I think Putin has done. But Trump's doing the same thing. You get enough people that may have been Trump supporters before, and then they get let go for no apparent reason, he's going to lose a fan base for sure.
So you kind of blew right past my question, Mike. But the initial question was really, why do you said you agree that Donald Trump is doing what they say in this article. So why do you agree? You're basically saying he's what they said, a country with the biggest military constructing an empire.
Because he's put in, if you look at all his nominations for various departments and his confirmations, and you look at his agenda and the actions that he's already taken, it is very clear that he is done a incredible, and this is not a judgment of whether it's a good, this is for the good or the bad. He's done an incredible job of setting up a team to get his agenda completed. And his agenda is very clear that he wants to radically change the federal government in the United States. He wants to radically change our foreign policy in such a way that, like you said, he is sitting on people. Like he whether it's the president of France or the president of Panama or Claudia Sheinbaum here in Mexico, or they are pandering to him.
I didn't say sitting.
Yeah, he's sitting on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
but what I'm saying is he's gotten, what's his name from Israel? Netanyahu came over. He's got, his announcement as an example that I'm going to meet with the diplomats from Russia, and we're gonna get a peace settlement here, and he doesn't include Ukraine, and then he says that Zelensky's a dictator, and then he's putting what he's doing is putting enormous amounts. But now Zelensky's flying to Washington D.C. to sign a mineral agreement with the United States, because basically what we're doing is saying, we'll help you, but we want this, and that hasn't happened before. That's new, and we're using our military power and our status in the world to powerful nations. That's just the bottom line. And you asked me, I think in the beginning, do I think that this is many weeks ago? Do I think that we'll take over the Panama Canal? I think we will. I do. I think we're going to take over the. I think we're going to get Greenland.
If I had to, I'm 50-50 on that one.
Yeah,
I just don't know enough about that one. I know what they have to offer, but my opinion on all this, Mike, is, everybody's like, he's trying to be king of America. He's doing tyrannical and dictatorial type things, right? But my retort to that is, it's always been that way.
Yeah.
It's always been that way. The only difference is, let's just take the U.S. government first. The U.S. government strategy has always been to appear as though we're not an empire.
That's right.
The only thing that he's doing different, Trump, is he's cool with it.
Yep. Yeah.
He don't matter. He don't. It doesn't matter to him about being the bad guy. Nope. He gloats in the idea of being the bad guy. Mm-hmm. He understands that things can happen swifter and more effectively when you are the bad guy. It's just like the average guy, if he's a manager of some sort in some company, one tries to be friends with the employees, the other one doesn't. But at the end of the year, the guy who's the asshole, all his employers are getting bonuses for the year. Somebody moves up and gets a position on his team. You get my point?
I get your point. I think the biggest thing that biggest thing that Donald Trump is getting accused of right now, I hate to say this, is the fact that he's being super effective, and half of the country can't stand the fact that pretty much everything he's put through is happening.
I agree 110% with what you said. But in addition, we have reached a point where we're soft.
Yep.
So we can't handle, that's a famous thing. We can't handle the truth. We cannot handle the truth. And I've spoken about this before. We have a population that is like the Matrix. They want to go back to, they want to take a pill and go back to how things were. They don't really want to know how the Matrix works.
No, you're right.
People want to get on their $1,500 phone and do TikTok, and they don't want to have no clue as to how that all happens. Because what I just described takes a lot of slave labor.
Yep.
For you to have a $1,500 phone and go through TikTok.
Yep. And that's the reality, is that, I mean, and that's one of the things that I find that Trump is doing that I don't think is going to work in the long run, is that, you know, it's great to say that we're going to move everything back to the United States and make it, but you have to have a workforce to be able to do it.
So
which we don't.
Let's get right to it, Mike. Let's talk about the Ukraine. Let's talk about their mineral wealth. Let's talk about, because I'm sure you are already up to date. They've conceded. We were talking on the last podcast about Zelenskyy and Putin and the positions they were, and we were spot on, because here he is. They say tomorrow or today he's going to be signing something that's basically giving us all this shit.
Yeah. So what Trump has changed is that instead of in the past, we would have given them a whole mess of shit to rebuild, weapons, security, all this stuff. What the only difference here, by the way, is that we're going to do all that, but we want something in return. That's fundamentally what Trump is doing differently. That I'm in agreement with. The problem is that Trump is I mean, and maybe I should agree with it more, because he's doing it more in a non-emotional way that I would appreciate, meaning that he's just looking at it as transactional. And
that's what I was saying. He's doing it in a way that we can't digest.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not warm and fuzzy. It's not super feel good, and which is why obviously the people on the left, liberals that would like to feel good, even though it's not really good, they're up in arms about this, is because they're like, we're basically fucking our ally. Ukraine is going to lose land and all this other stuff. Yeah, they are, and that's the way the war is going to end. And the bottom line is Russia was bigger and meaner, and they came in, they stole some land, and they're gonna leave this war with the land. That's what's gonna happen. By the way, that's happened for the last fucking 100,000 years of human history.
That's what I mean. I'm saying.
It's the way it works. It's just the way it works. So Trump's like, look, let's stop killing people. Let's just agree that this is how it happened and move on. And yeah, that doesn't sound. It doesn't sound warm and fuzzy, for sure. It's why I said on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, in my sort of preaching to the liberal side, if you guys don't come up with alternative solutions, or an alternative person that can come up with solutions, you're going to be at the. I don't know that they necessarily realize how big of a deficit they're going to be in. See, I think they're thinking that Trump is going to destroy Trump. And the reality is I don't think that's going to happen. He has got enough power in place at this point, with all of his nominees, and with the Senate and the Congress, and with judges, and with foreign leaders, and you got to come up with an alternative. Otherwise, he's going to win. And what's going to happen is, 4 years from now, he's going to be stronger than ever. They're only going to get stronger and stronger. And, very similar to a kingdom, he's going to appoint an heir at some point. And guess what? That heir is going to win.
So, bro, I know this is kind of early, but if we were at the end of the 4 years, who do you think would have a good chance?
Well, I
An
think
obvious name is JD Vance, but that's
yeah,
not necessarily.
not necessarily what's going to happen. My gut feeling would be JD Vance is probably best positioned for it. However, could I see one of the Trump's kids? Yep, for sure.
Part of that.
Oh, I think you could see a Trump kid. I think because that's a kingdom, right? I wouldn't rule that out.
So I got a question about that, Mike. Who do you think it would be?
Which kid?
Because I'm going with his sister. I mean, with his daughter.
I would go with his daughter as well. Yep, that's who I think too. And you've noticed that she's backed off, and she's being more quiet, not really, quite a bit less involved, and that's, I think, a positioning thing. And I think at some point, she's going to get brought in and be groomed and whatever. And I can see that. I can see that happening.
You got anything else you want to say, Mike?
Nope. We got to say goodbye because we don't want to run over.
All right, guys. You know what I'm going to say. Stay safe, tread lightly, and hopefully we'll see you here or on a trail soon.
You have been listening to Waypoint Overland's Random Waypoints. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more.